And hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast, the only video game show. So, today I am joined by Lucy, and we're going to be talking about our upcoming game. And I have the name right in front of me because otherwise I'd forget. Ace and Arrow, Heart to Heart.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Well, before we get into that, we're going to be playing a brief round of one of my favorite games. We'll be playing a rousing game of Yu Gi Oh! Or Dark Souls. And how it works, I'll name three things, and you'll guess if it is either a monster from Yu Gi Oh! Or a boss from Dark Souls, because they both have. Because they sound like names that even a fantasy writer would be like, that's not a real thing. So let's see. Let's see. Some obscure names. All right, first one. The Bed of Chaos, Yu-Gi-Oh or Dark Souls.
Mm, Dark Souls?
That is correct.
Hey!
It is a boss from the first Dark Souls game. And let's see what is next. Uh, hmm. Let's see, what's one with a weird enough name? Alright, next. Hundred Eyes Dragon, Yu Gi Oh! Or Dark Souls.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yep, that is correct.
Hey!
And let's see. And the last one will be. Hmm. The last one for today is Earthbound Immortal Red Nova.
Oh gosh. Dark Souls.
Incorrect. It is indeed a
Uh,
monster
uh,
from Yu Gi Oh!
no! I was going for 3 out of 3.
So yeah, with that out of the way, we can get to the real meat and potatoes of this episode. So, Lucy, let's start with you introducing yourself to my five viewer.
Well, first off, I'm Lucy Blundell. I'm an independent game developer, and I go by Kinmoku online. And I've been an indie dev for 11 years now, and I've been in the games industry for just over 16 years. Before I was an indie dev, I was a graphic designer at EA Chilingo, who were the original publisher of Angry Birds and Cut the Rope, a lot of like mobile games around that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really cool place to kind of get my foot in the industry. But then, yeah, after 5 years of that, I really wanted to kind of make my own games. And yeah, so I've been doing it for 11 years, like I said. My first game was One Night Stand. My second game was Videoverse, and my next game is Ace and Arrow Heart to Heart.
Okay. And how would you say you first discovered video games?
Yeah, so I it's been part of my life for so long. Like I can't really remember, but I have an older brother, and I think I've just been playing games for like as long as I could pick up a controller, really, or like a mouse and keyboard. Um, I think some of my earliest memories were like playing Lemmings on like old like MS-DOS computers. Um, my mum would like work quite long hours sometimes, and she'd kind of like sit me down in front of the computer at her office, and I'd just be like playing Lemmings on that. And then when I got a little bit older, it was we had an Amiga, and I would play games like The Settlers, Worms, Micro Machines, and also Deluxe Paint, which was a little bit like MS Paint, but it had like animation features, and it was really cool. And I think that's where my like love of like digital kind of art and creation started. Yeah.
Okay, and what would you say is your favorite game and or games growing up?
So a lot of people that follow me know that the big game in my life was like Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm.
But like before that, before I came across that, I didn't realize like video games could tell such like powerful emotional stories and long journeys. I used to play a lot of what I call like building games. So things like The Settlers, which I mentioned, Theme Park, Theme Hospital, The Sims, and like Civilization games. Like I like those a lot. But then when I played like Final Fantasy VII, this kind of like JRPG visual novel like world kind of opened up to me. So then I played like Pokemon, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Yellow, played like the other Final Fantasy games, kind of like dipping my toes into like more Japanese things. Yeah, and still love that stuff now.
Okay, and what would you say is your favorite game slash games now?
Mm. So yeah, again, it's a huge question. I could talk all day. I think in like recent years, the Yakuza series has been something that I really like
Mm-hmm.
now. Yakuza Zero in particular.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm a huge fan of those. But also like strategy RPGs. So I like Fire Emblem quite a lot. Fire Emblem Three Houses in particular. Last year I played the 100 Line Last Defense Academy, which I still can't stop thinking about. Like, I think it's a fantastic game. Um, but also like visual novel stuff I've gotten more into, like as
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten older. So, The House in Fata Morgana, Shibuya Scramble, Virtue's Last Reward, that whole Escape trilogy, to be honest, and like Danganronpa and stuff. I just really like kind of sci-fi visual novels, and occasionally Otome games, but generally, yeah, like they're the things that I've been kind of obsessing over the last few years.
Okay. And so and now we move on to the meat of this. So, Lucy, if you were at a convention like PAX or any sort of gaming convention, and Ace and Arrow Heart to Heart had like a booth set up, and someone was walking by, and they saw like the Ace and Arrow like heart shaped like pride symbols, and they're asking like, what is up with it? What is this thing I'm looking at right here? What would be like the elevator? What would be like the sort of elevator pitch you would get to get any like potential like people interested in like trying it out and then like later buying it?
Yeah, so Ace and Arrow Heart to Heart is a short narrative experience where you get to talk to several aspec characters. So that's asexual, aromantic, and learn about their kind of experiences, their life story, hear like what they have to say. You can ask a load of questions if you're like particularly curious about things, um, and gain like a bit of like clarity of like different walks of life. And then maybe like if your friendship develops with these people, they will then want to it's set in a barcade, so they may
Mm-hmm.
want to play video games with you and share that experience and take it a little bit further. It is not a dating sim. It's more of a like friendship sim, I guess. Um, and I'm just hoping to kind of raise a bit more awareness for the L in LGBTQIA plus, as it's often kind of a misunderstood or forgotten part of like kind of queer identities. Um, so yeah, and it's kind of short. I'm probably aiming for around 2 hours of gameplay with a few various different endings, and yeah, that's where I'm at the moment.
Okay. And where did the idea for the game like come from? Did it come from like any like one source, or is it just like a collection of things that you decided to just like put together and then make into this?
Yeah, so I can't exactly pinpoint like one moment or anything like that. I think it's just like something that's built up for me over the years. I came out as gray asexual when I think I was about 30 years old, so it's quite late, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think like even so, like over the years, I've been like, well, it was late for me because there wasn't much representation, and I want there to be more of that. I want there to be more awareness. I want there to be more understanding. Um, and I think like I read and watched Heartstopper, which is like a show and a comic on Netflix, and it made me realize like, oh, I could like tell a queer story as well. Like, what's stopping me? And I've had like elements of like my asexuality show up in my previous works, but there's never been like the full focus. So I wanted to make something where it's like this is the full focus, and these characters are not like they're coded asexual, they are asexual, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
something that just doesn't happen that much. So it feels to me like there's kind of a gap in the market, and I want to create something that I really hope like Aces and Arrows can see themselves in and really enjoy. And also wanted to create like this feeling, like this space of like a real place for um like expect people to almost hang out in the game. And I think like we're quite a small kind of demographic. I think it's estimated to be like 1% of the population, so it can be quite hard to like for aces and arrow people to meet up in real life. Also, like I live in Germany and my German is pretty bad, so I'm also like kind of cut off from a lot of this. So as long as you have like an internet connection and you can download the game, like you can kind of hopefully feel kind of warm and welcomed in this community and just like, be around, like even if they're fictional characters, you still get to, hear their stories and they've all come from like a very real place. So yeah, I just made it to hopefully spread awareness and just help people not feel so alone.
Okay. And like, was making it a visual novel, was that an idea from like the beginning when you first like thought of like this game in the first place, or as you were making it, was there a point where you realized that the visual novel would allow you to like better convey all the things that will be told like when the game is released?
Mm. So generally, like, yeah, it's always been planned to be a visual novel. I'm not a fantastic programmer, so I tend to stick with like games that I can make in RenPy, um, which I've used it for like all of my projects. And RenPy is really good for like visual novels. But there will be, as I mentioned kind of briefly earlier, there are mini games. Ace and Arrow is set in a barcade. So there are arcade machines dotted around, and some of the games that you can play are a rhythm like dancing mini game.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quiz, and there is also like a bit of a puzzle game. And the characters, like when you're playing these things, they will like talk to you and engage with you. Um, but ultimately, like it is very like story heavy. You talk to like in depth with uh 5.5 characters. One of them is a bit more of a bonus towards the end, but you get to like talk like one on one with them, and you can make a lot of choices. So the dialogue will like change depending on the things you ask or how engaged you are. There's also, again, it's set in a barcade, so if you have, one too many drinks, that an option pops up for like a more like a drunk response, like, oh, this is maybe a little bit inappropriate or pushing a button or something, but you can only get that if you've been like drinking alcohol. So it has like these kind of little mechanics as well,
Mm-hmm.
um, just to try and like make the dialogue more fun, more realistic, and yeah, like I do have like in future like plans to make games that aren't visual novels, um, such as like an RPG Maker game or a point and click adventure. I'd love to make one of those one day. But right now it's visual novels for me because it's just kind of what I know and what
Mm-hmm.
I'm good at. But one day I will hopefully branch out into a different genre.
Okay, and like you mentioned that the main location in the game is a barcade. Like, was that? Did you ever? Was that like? Did you always have that one location in mind, or did you? Or like as you were like creating the game, were you like going through possible like locations as to like where this like hypothetical meetup in this game would take place?
So this was something that I think I kind of nailed down quite quickly. Um, One thing is like I love whenever I'm traveling, I love going to arcades and barcades.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy like seeing the kind of video game um, inspired drinks menus, like cocktails and things. But I also wanted to have like the mini games to play, like for that to be a bit of a bonding event.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like, oh, I can mix these things that I like in my own life. It needs to be set in like a kind of communal space. So it would be like a coffee shop or maybe like a communal hall or something. But it felt a little bit more like a little bit more fun for it to be in a barcade. Um, and yeah, like I've kind of been able to put a lot of my own kind of experiences in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, my love of video games, for example, like I've really tried to make each arcade machine like quite fun, and maybe some of them are kind of a bit of a rip on like real arcade machines. Um, but it's also I have, a bit of a fan base where not everyone is like asexual or aromantic, but I want them to still enjoy my games, still play them. And my last game, Videoverse, was very much like inspired by kind of retro video game consoles and like the early internet. So I wanted like the fans of like my other games to, even if they're not asexual or aromantic, still play this and still get something that they really like out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a way to hopefully blend like this topic of the A spectrum with video games, and hopefully try and make as many people happy as possible.
Yeah. You know, a few months ago, you actually announced this game's release on International Ace Day. So, just quick question: like when you put it out, did any of your friends who like saw it and then they saw the date come out be like, "Ha, that's on brand"?
um, Not so much. I think a lot of people were quite shocked. I don't think this is what people were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I did have, like in the like months before I announced it, I did have a lot of people almost assume like my next game was going to be related to Videoverse, maybe a sequel or more like a nostalgia retro game thing. And it felt really bad because it's like I've taken quite a big tangent from that. Um, and hopefully the barcade setting is going to be enough for people like that. But yeah, I think it was quite a surprise. But what's been really nice about it since announcing is I've had quite a lot of people like approach me who I didn't know were on the A spectrum, saying like, "Oh, I'm really interested in this because I'm asexual or I'm aro ace," or
Mm-hmm.
even like journalists as well. Have come to me and be like, "Oh, I'm asexual, and I'd love to write about it." Um, and again, like I didn't expect it. I think a lot of it seems like a lot of aces are almost hiding. So it's been really nice, like having that kind of positive reaction to it.
Okay. Just quick aside, Lucy, when you have time, there's a VTuber Cafe Foxtail, and while most of her videos are trans meme related, a while I think last year ish, she made one about Arrow Ace memes that I think would just be like a nice companion piece to the game when
Oh,
it's
okay.
released. Also, just I just like my favorite like meme there was like NSFW, not safe for work, but instead it was just not safe from Waluigi, and it shows him just like coming out of the screen looking like he's gonna get you.
I like it.
So yes. What other sources, if any, gave you like the inspiration for like the visual aspect of the game? Because
Hmm.
I'm looking at like the screenshots right now, and it's almost well, I'm not a illustrator, so I wouldn't know, but like the characters at least have an almost like color pencil kind of look to them.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So they have like I don't know if you've heard of Copic markers, but they're like Japanese marker pens. Um, Now it hasn't been drawn like traditionally. I haven't used a load of ink on it or anything. I draw by hand on my iPad,
Mm-hmm.
but I have these. I use Procreate, and I have this really nice Copic marker, like kind of brush. So I've been using that. But the inspiration for that kind of style kind of came from a couple of illustrators that I like. One of them is a Korean artist called Pung, which is spelled Puuung. So Pung. But they do really cute illustrations of like couples in love, and there was something about that art style. Like they're kind of like this couple like hanging out at home or hanging out at a bar or even an arcade. One of the pictures, and they're like just having a lot of fun. And there's something like really soft and gentle and warm, but it's also set at night. Most of their drawings are like at nighttime,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of captured the fuzzy kind of feeling that I wanted. Um, but also, like, I was inspired by an artist called, if I get the name right, Eisaku Kubanouchi, who is the artist of the character artist behind Carol and Tuesday, which is an
Oh,
anime that's on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched that one.
a bit.
Okay. So it's obviously like an anime style, but it's a little bit more like detailed and realistic. And that was the kind of feeling that I wanted for this. I didn't want it to be, like a hyper moe anime style or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. I wanted it to feel very more like realistic, but also like still quite appealing. Like I wouldn't want to draw it in like a hyper Western comic book art style or anything like that. Or even like photorealism, like that wasn't the goal either. Um, so yeah, like and also like inspired by a few visual novels. There's Paranormal Sight and Gnosia, and they're both kind of visual novels that kind of they zoom in a lot more on the characters' faces and expressions. And again, they're both really beautifully drawn. So I wanted to have that for the game as well. Like instead of just kind of having a static character like that's really zoomed out and you just see the whole body standing there looking a bit awkward. Um, Here in Ace and Arrow Heart to Heart, like players will sit down together and they'll be quite close and intimate, and you can really see their facial expressions and there's like lip syncing and a few like subtle animations and things. So I'm really proud of the artwork on this one. I think I've been able to do a lot of things that I've wanted to do for a long time. Um, So yeah, I'm still working on the artwork though, but it's probably about 90% finished at this point. But after this call, I'll be drawing a little bit more and finishing off one of the characters.
Okay. And by the time the game is like fully released and out into the world, what is like the collective amount of time you'd say would it'll have taken, from idea to finished product?
Yeah. It's a little tricky to tell with this one because for the first like year and a half or so of development, I was still working on like Videoverse. So Videoverse was being brought to console, which meant I had to kind of um, update it for like button controls. But these were things that I was working with my porting partner with, so they would do some of that, and then I would test it, and then sometimes I would tweak it. And during the back and forth, I had time to work on my new project. Um, but yeah, then we did a Japanese translation, and it ended up taking a lot more time than I thought it would. I think the word count for Videoverse is like 60 or 70,000 words, something like that. And then there was also like all the artwork and drawing. So then there'd be like several months where I wasn't working on Ace and Arrow at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when I first created the file, I think was like February 2024. So that was over 2 years ago. But there's been a lot of like interruptions, really. So I imagine like probably when it's finished, I'll probably have spent like a year and a half on it, like in total, without, working on other things. Um, so it's a bit shorter than like for Videoverse, I spent just over 3 years on it. Um, so it's a little bit of a smaller, like more manageable project. Because yeah, Videoverse it just kind of blew up and it was a little bit out of control. So here I'm just kind of trying to restrain myself, and if it does well, then I might add like future updates for Ace and Arrow
Mm-hmm.
and take it from there. But I'm starting small, and then we'll only expand if people want it.
Okay. And when the game is eventually released and available for people to buy and play through, like what is something you like hope that the any and all players like take away from it?
So, kind of touched on it a little before. I'd like to kind of spread awareness of the A spectrum a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, and just try and clear up a bit of like misunderstandings or assumptions. Hopefully, create some like more allies. I think that's always a nice thing.
Mm-hmm.
um, and just like general like warmth and acceptance. My idea is like when you kind of sit down and talk to people one on one, maybe if you don't understand like other people's way of life, but if you sit down and talk to people, like you can kind of understand it better. So I thought like creating a simulation of this in like a video game space would be quite nice. The game allows you to kind of mess up. Um, I mentioned earlier there's like these drunk answers and inappropriate things that you can ask, but it's kind of in there as like an opportunity to learn and grow, and you're not going to hurt anyone because at the end of the day it's just a video game. Um, but ultimately, like I have designed it to try and be fun and for players to have a good time whilst learning about all this. Yeah.
Okay, and let's say we go. I think that we can move on to the final question that all of my guests have always understood perfectly. Shut up. Um, so Lucy, in your opinion, is video games?
Is video games. So for a while I was like, what is this? Is this a typo? No, it's not a typo. I'm gonna interpret this as what do I make of video games these days? Is that right? Am I right?
Sure. It's basically like an ink blot test.
Okay. because I used to be very chronically online when I was younger, but less so these days. But yeah, I think like if I'm interpreting it that way, um, I've loved video games since like I can barely remember, just like books and movies and TV shows. Um, but I think we're in a bit of a weird time with all like the AI stuff coming out at the moment. Um, it's pretty turbulent. Um, and I think a lot of game devs are kind of getting affected by this. A lot of studios are closing down. I've had to like, make my next project a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's affecting everyone really. Um, and I think like it doesn't just affect from people creating things with AI. I think a bigger thing that kind of worries me is like the algorithms really.
Mm-hmm.
They push the games that have money behind them, or even like, if you want to go down a different route, political agendas. And it is going to be very hard for me to, I know it's going to be hard for me to put out a queer game with the way the world is right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be a challenge.
Oh yeah.
But it's something that I think it's art that has meaning, and I'm gonna fight for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so even if the game gets like buried by like AI slop, which it probably will, because that just keeps happening to everyone. Um, so yeah, like it's just a weird time, and I've been doing this for 11 years. Like I've been very fortunate, but I would love to keep doing it for another 11 years, even more. And I'd love to make bigger games. I'd love to do that RPG or the point and click that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to expand my team. That would be awesome. But we're just in a time where I think surviving is the kind of the best we can do. Um, and you've got to, with the algorithms kind of having their own agendas and things, we've got to really dig to like find the quality stuff. But I promise, like anyone listening, like it is worth it. It is worth it to like go on to itch.io one day and just download a bunch of obscure indie games and just try them. Because I think that's where the good stuff is. And you're not going to find it if you're just listening to, I don't know, like the most popular TikToks. I do get a little bit wound up or upset sometimes where you see people talking about like all these niche indie games and none of them are niche, none of them are even indie. They're like got hundreds of thousands, millions even spent into their marketing budget. And that's the thing, like we only really see those things now. We don't hear from smaller artists. And I think this is a huger topic that goes like even outside of video games. It's a problem with like books and just, crafts and arts in general. Like it's really hard to find like the real stuff. But I promise it's out there. And if you find it, you'll have a great time. So
Yeah.
that's my thoughts on video games. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. It's like, especially now. It'll be tougher to like tell stories of any kind, especially if they're queer. But I think we're like I've seen like in video games, it's happening slowly but surely. I mean, 2 years ago, like when just a best like just early birthday present for me at the time was when um the remake, the Nintendo Switch remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door came out, and Nintendo, in like a rare good move, they confirmed that like Vivian, the little purple shadow girl that can punch
Yes,
you on
yeah.
fire, is canonically trans. And like if I can think of like fairly mainstream games that are like explicitly queer, like most people wouldn't think of it, but like the Borderlands games, like ever since like Borderlands 2, it's gotten like more and more queer. Like I mean, just like the pivot like is, I can't remember if it was confirmed in or outside of the game, but like Maya the siren like is confirmed to be Ace, and like I'm not sure like where that is because there's like millions of audio logs in those games. Like in like most of the like almost all the characters, a lot of the characters at least are like bi or trans. There's one character like from Borderlands 3 to New Tales of the Borderlands, you can actually see like a trans mask character like transitioning. Like you see them like
Okay.
pre-transition because the bad guys were trying to explode a whole bunch of planets, and then when things are slightly calmer, you see him like further along. So like I agree it's going to be a lot tough, especially now, but I think like just well video games and just like creative like the creative like works in general are just making some steps forward. But yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think I get a little bit sad when you see pushback from it so often, and it's always these loud voices, always always attacking, and it's really annoying because I know a lot of people are so appreciative of this content existing, like yourself, like me. It's really nice when you see yourself represented and these team, especially these big budget teams, because they're the ones that can really like you know, have a huge audience and really make a difference. Um, so I want to see more of that. I mean, recently for me, it's been Tomodachi Life. Been playing that quite a lot, and in the old one, you couldn't have like same-sex couples, like marriages,
Yeah.
and now you can, and it's really you can have a non-binary me's as well, and that's just really lovely. It's a small simple thing, and I have a lot of criticism with that game. Like there's a lot of cut corners and things, but generally like just seeing that as it not being like a big deal, it's just in there and you can just enjoy it is really lovely. So yes, more like big studios, like please keep making this stuff. It's really nice to see.
Yeah. And with that, we can. I would like to thank Lucy for joining me promoting her game. If any of you have been sound like you're interested, if you're Ace and Arrow yourself, be like, hey, it's me. Or you just wanna, as Lucy says, just learn a bit more about it, about that space. You can go to Steam, wishlist it because, I, as I've heard many times before, like every bit helps, especially if
Yes,
you're
it
indie.
does.
And yes, if you've enjoyed this, be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. So, and yes, and if you heard these words of mine and you would like to hear slightly more coherent words, you can go to your podcast platform of choice where I and my various co hosts host Gotta Recap 'em All, where we are recapping every single episode of the Pokemon anime, and no, I am not kidding. And yes, before we sign off, Lucy, is there anything else you would like to plug?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I think you're doing like great work, like inviting indie devs on, giving us a voice and a place to promote. That's always really, really welcome. So thank you. Um, and also, if anyone wants to follow me on like socials, I'm generally at kinmoku.games. On Blue Sky, it's just Kinmoku. And yeah, like follow along. As Debbie says, like the best place is probably the Steam wish list and follow. That is the thing that means the most to us. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been the Pumpkin Copter cast, and as I say at the end of every episode, have a gourd day, everyone.